Revenge with Karen.
I knew exactly how much they valued me the moment I got locked out of my own admin dashboard during a routine maintenance window. No warning. Just a cheery little pop-up. Permission denied. Contact system administrator. That administrator, by the way, used to be me. I stared at the screen like it had just slapped me. 10 years. 10 goddamn years of babysitting that temperamental beast of a backend. Crawling out of bed at 2 a.m. because a server threw a tantrum, missing Christmas dinner to restore a corrupted database, patching critical security holes, while everyone else was posting margarita selfies from Cabo. And now, I needed to contact someone else to do my job. Let me back up. When I started, we were 5 people in a subleased office above a vape shop. I wired our first production server on a folding table using the Office Keurig outlet, built the data stack from scratch, every integration, every failover, every sanity-saving automation script. The engineers called me ghost hands because things just worked. Not flashy, not loud, but solid like concrete under tile. No one ever talks about it until it cracks. And for years, I was fine with that. I didn't need the spotlight. Let the product folks take their bows. Let the sales guys toss around buzzwords like parade candy. I stayed in the engine room making sure the ship didn't sink. But ships change course. And captains changed too. It started slow, like rot. A skipped stand-up here. A forwarded report there. We're streamlining processes, Eli said one day, sipping something green and smug. No offense, but we need less tribal knowledge, more standardized protocols. Translation. You've been here too long, and I don't understand what you do. I'm gonna neuter your access and call it optimization. Next thing I knew, I was getting Google Calendar declines from meetings I used to run. Tasks I'd owned for years were quietly reassigned to guys fresh out of boot camp who still thought cron job was a hairstyle. I tried to be gracious. I even trained a couple of them. Gave them my annotated playbooks, warned them about the weird edge cases that would eat them alive if they weren't careful. You could see it in their eyes, half gratitude, half embarrassment. Like they knew they were being handed something sacred and fragile, but were too green to know how sacred or how fragile. And then there was Eli, Vice President of Strategic Operations. Translation, PowerPoint peacocker, with a thirst for control and a resume full of acronyms. He talked like he was narrating a commercial for himself. Claimed he was going to modernize our data philosophy. Started every sentence with "at my last company." Never finished a sentence without insulting someone's intelligence. He wanted centralization, uniformity, control. All data access needs to be routed through our new compliance funnel, he said during one particularly painful town hall, where we all sat pretending to take notes, while wondering how the hell a man with that much cologne survived open floor plans. My name wasn't on a single slide, not even the one showing the architecture I designed. A week later, he held a workflow audit meeting. I showed up, notes ready, patches scheduled, access logs in hand. He didn't let me speak, just smiled and clicked through a flowchart that looked like it had been drawn by a hungover intern. Then he turned to me and said, in front of 12 people, "Thanks for the legacy work, but we're streamlining now. The data is for essential personnel." Like I was some relic from the analog age. Like the only thing I brought to the table was a dusty Rolodex and a grudge. I felt it, that cold, metallic click deep in my chest. The one that says you just got erased. Not laid off, not demoted, erased. Like I never mattered. Like I was just a system process someone finally hit end task on. I went home that night and didn't even turn on the lights. Sat in the dark and listened to the hum of my own server rack in the closet. It was the only thing that still felt like it respected me. That still did what I told it to. Funny thing is, even then, I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition, a moment, a pause, a "hey, we see you." But no one looked, so I started looking back, at access logs, at pipeline configs, at expiring credentials I'd flagged months ago but were never rotated. I didn't touch a thing. Sabotage, that's not who I am, but I did stop reminding people. I stopped saving them from themselves, and that's when the cracks began to show. Little ones, but growing. It wasn't even a boardroom, just a windowless conference cave with stale bagels and a whiteboard covered in arrows pointing nowhere. The kind of place where ideas went to die and jargon went to multiply. Eli stood at the front like he was Moses come down from the cloud server, talking about zero trust architecture like he invented it, when last week he thought SSL was a stock ticker. Behind him was a slide titled Redundancy Reduction, Who actually needs access? My name was third on the list, highlighted in yellow, no explanation. I was the only one in the room without a laptop, not because I didn't bring one, but because my login stopped working that morning. I figured it was an outage, maybe a permissions hiccup, even messaged IT, got a vague checking into it and radio silence after. Now I understood why. He clicked his little remote like it was a weapon. Legacy admin roles have created significant operational risk. Our new compliance-forward framework reduces that exposure. We're not pointing fingers, just aligning priorities with access levels. Then he looked right at me, smiled like a used car deal. Effective immediately. Non-essential admin rights will be revoked for team members not directly involved in demo phase operations. That was it. No warning, no one-on-one, just non-essential, in front of my team, in front of the interns I'd trained, in front of the junior PM who once cried when I saved her 6-hour sync from a corrupt Q job. I didn't even blink. Not then. I just nodded like we were discussing weather. Inside, though, everything fell quiet. Not rage, not even shame. Just this eerie, airless clarity. The kind you get right before a nosebleed or a car crash, where time stretches and your brain goes cold. I wasn't surprised. I was prepared. I'd seen this play out before. The only difference was this time, I was the one getting edited out. No one made eye contact as I left. A couple stared at their keyboards like they were about to type something meaningful. They didn't. They didn't even pause, just kept rolling into a slide titled efficiency through hierarchy. I went back to my desk, sat down. My chair still squeaked the same way it always had. My plant dying crooked looked exactly as neglected as I felt. I stared at my monitors, logged out of everything, and I laughed, once, quiet. Then opened a Word doc titled Transition Notes. They wanted a compliance story? Fine. I'd give them one, clean handoff, zero liability. Nothing they could accuse me of. I started writing down where everything lived, API endpoints, encryption schedules, data retention flags. I even included the contact info for 2 of the third-party vendors I'd onboarded back when I was still misspelling MongoDB in Slack. But I left one thing out. Not maliciously, just accidentally on purpose. The credential token for the sandboxed replication server, the one tied to the demo environment. It was already set to expire. I'd flagged it twice in Jira. No one responded. It wasn't my job anymore after all, and I wasn't essential. Remember? So I packed up my tote bag, took my dying plant, and walked out without saying a word. No door slam, no middle finger, just air conditioning and carpet under my feet. Outside, the sun hit me like a joke. Bright, cheerful, oblivious. I stood there, holding that wilted ficus, and realized they'd made a mistake, not in underestimating me, but in assuming I'd stay. Because here's the thing about being invisible for years. You learn to see everything, especially the cracks. And this new regime, it was made of glass. I didn't rage quit. I didn't storm into HR with a box of receipts or blast some dramatic farewell on Slack. No tequila shots, no printer smashing, no you'll miss me when I'm gone speeches. I just logged out. I spent that last full day doing what I always did, keeping things from falling apart. Not because they deserved it, but because I did. Because if my name was going to be erased, it would at least be attached to a system that still held together when I left it. I started with documentation, not the sanitized, bullet point fluff you toss into Confluence for compliance. I mean the real stuff, the kind with context. Workarounds, caveats, things that'd break if someone touched them the wrong way. I wrote it all down. Pipeline triggers, data pruning jobs, the delicate balance of our failover queues, how the East region always lagged by 7 ms unless you manually staggered the sync task every third Thursday. The docs filled fast. 100 little notes left behind like emergency flares in a foggy ocean. Most of them, no one would read. A few might save someone's ass for a week or two. But eventually, they'd drift into digital dust, archived and unread. Made sure the backups were intact, that nightly ETLs were humming, that the alerts for low storage thresholds were still piped into the proper inbox, though I doubted anyone was checking it now that I was non-essential. Then I got to the sandboxed replication server, the one tied to the upcoming demo, the one that mirrored live data without touching production. I'd architected that box with duct tape and foresight. It was never meant to be long-term. It was a demo parachute, prop to keep investor pitches from tripping over real-time latency. But the credential tied to that environment, it had an expiration date, standard security rotation, 90 days. I'd flagged it weeks ago. Twice. One comment, one Jira ticket. No one followed up, so I left it alone. I didn't delete it, didn't change a single setting. That would have been sabotage. No, this was cleaner. This was restraint. It wasn't my job anymore, remember. I backed up my personal notes, wiped nothing. If anyone ever came looking, my footprints would be clear, calm, and accountable. I even left behind the Chrome extension I built for debugging pagination issues in the internal CMS, no attribution, just working code. Then I unplugged my USB hub, closed my terminal, sat back. My screen stared at me, blank and blue. I looked around the office one last time. Open floor plan felt like a warehouse of ghosts, half the team out sick or remote, or just pretending to be busy behind noise-canceling headphones. No one noticed I'd been sitting there for hours closing my life down. My plant was already dead in the trash. My badge slid quietly under my keyboard. As I walked toward the elevator, I passed Eli's glassbox office. He wasn't in it. Just his ergonomic chair spun slightly to the left, facing a whiteboard covered in gibberish about agile velocity thresholds. I hit the elevator button. My reflection stared back at me from the polished steel doors. Tired eyes, but sharp, not broken, waiting. When the doors opened, I stepped inside and didn't look back. No one chased me. No one said goodbye, and that's fine. They'll remember me eventually. Just not the way they hoped. The funny thing about systems, real systems, not the ones they diagram in pitch decks, is they don't scream when they're dying. They whisper. A 5-second delay here, a skipped checksum there, one malformed JSON payload in 1,000. You don't see the whole thing collapse. You just stop trusting it one little piece at a time. Inside the company, the countdown had begun. The big investor demo was 10 days away, and every meeting was a ritual sacrifice of time and sanity. The CTO, Jared, was trying to keep it together, running rehearsals, polishing transitions, pretending the API latency wasn't climbing like a fever chart. The engineering team was fried, chugging Celsius, and pretending their slack green dot meant something other than spiraling despair. Eli, of course, was thriving. He walked through the office with that shark smile, barking phrases like MVP showcase and alignment cadence, while the rest of the team quietly resented his ability to wear khakis and smugness like a uniform. Every time someone raised a red flag, he swatted it down with the same recycled line, "No one is irreplaceable." That phrase became a joke, a curse wrapped in denial, and the system, my system, was starting to show why. It began with the demo database. Someone from product noticed the test data was lagging behind what was showing in production. Not a huge gap, hours, not days, but enough to make their scripted walkthroughs glitchy. Fields weren't populating the way they rehearsed. A customer record that should have said Acme Corp now said Acne Corp with a missing revenue field and an upside-down pie chart. Then came the logs. Our observability tools, God bless them, started spitting out strange metrics. Log entries skipped timeframes, like the system was blinking. Requests were being processed, but the metadata trails went dark, like watching security footage where one frame out of every 30 had just vanished. A junior dev named Jorge flagged it in a dev channel. Anyone seeing gaps in the sandbox logs? Eli replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a note, not critical. Focus on demo polish. We'll refactor logging post-launch. Translation, shut up and fake it till they fund us. Then QA started complaining that certain integration tests were failing intermittently. Not always, just enough to make them seem paranoid. The CI pipeline passed green if you squinted hard enough, but internally, everyone felt it. Something wasn't right. They brought in a contractor to audit the infrastructure, some dude in a flannel shirt who used the phrase stateful container like it made him special. He spent 2 days poking around the dashboards I built, nodded sagely, and told Jared everything looked generally scalable. He sent them a 5-page PDF of buzzwords and vanished into LinkedIn. Meanwhile, no one could get a hold of the replication server credentials. You could see it in the meetings, eyes darting, hands fidgeting, engineers pretending they still knew where the failover configs lived. One junior asked if we had documentation on the sandbox sync job. Eli interrupted before anyone could speak. That's legacy. We've migrated to a centralized sync model. They hadn't talked about it in one meeting, but no one had touched the actual config because no one could. The CTO started walking around with a haunted look, one foot in leadership, one foot still tethered to reality. He knew, deep down, he knew they'd made a mistake, But admitting it would mean admitting who they'd removed, and his neck was already in the guillotine if this demo flopped. So they doubled down. They added animations to the dashboard. New fonts, spun up a Slack channel called #Demidewarum, where people posted motivational memes and fake check-ins to keep the illusion alive. Meanwhile, the system was rotting under the surface. Quietly, elegantly, like a bridge held together with duct tape and optimism. And me, I was watching it unfold from a friend's laptop. One of the junior engineers still texted me now and then off the record. "We miss you," she wrote once after the 6th test build failed. I didn't reply. They didn't miss me. They missed the silence that came from not having to worry. They missed systems that didn't need excuses. They missed things working and not knowing why, and now they were learning. One skipped log at a time. The canary dropped on a Wednesday, 4:17 p.m., right between Eli's all-hands hype sync and someone's door dash order of poke that stunk up the whole west side of the floor. A junior engineer named Natalie, not even 6 months in, noticed something strange in the deployment log. A soft warning, buried, tucked in the fine print like a legal clause no one reads until their house is on fire. It read, "Auth token validation failed. Sandbox replication server access denied. Token expired. Not fatal. Yet." But anyone with a brain and 2 weeks of backend experience would know that when your demo environment can't validate access to its own data mirror, the clock is ticking and it's not ticking for you. Natalie did what she was supposed to. She emailed Eli, CC'd her team lead, even linked the log and wrote a polite subject line, "Possible credential expiry sandbox server." Eli didn't answer for 3 hours. When he finally replied, it was short, not relevant to demo flow. "Thanks." No punctuation, no follow-up. Just a man so confident in his ignorance he mistook it for leadership. Natalie posted the exchange in a private group chat. "I'm probably overreacting," she wrote. She wasn't. But she was new, and new people are taught to doubt their instincts in rooms full of older, louder men who say it's fine because they won't be the ones blamed when it's not. That message found its way to someone I still trusted. A backend dev named Marcus, who'd once shadowed me during an overnight outage, eaten gas station burritos at 3 a.m. while waiting for a disk image to rebuild. He knew what that warning meant, so he texted me. "Screenshot it started, hasn't it?" I didn't respond at first, just stared at the words, that awful line from the log replaying in my mind like a death rattle, timers ticking. The replication server's token had a hard cutoff. I'd set it myself. Standard security practice, 90 days, non-rotating, no auto-renew. Why? Because a sandbox is only as clean as its access window. And if you leave that window open too long, someone falls out or in. I'd reminded them, twice, documented, filed, forgotten, and now they'd rather pretend everything was cloud native and resilient than admit the foundation had termites. I sat on my porch with a lukewarm beer and reread Marcus's message. Part of me wanted to warn them, send an anonymous tip, draft a rescue plan. There were good people still in that building. Engineers who gave a damn. People who didn't deserve to be dragged down by a VP who thought redundancy was just a buzzword for job cuts. But another part of me, the colder part, was done handing out parachutes. They didn't just lock me out, they erased me, called me non-essential, laughed through meetings while my name was deleted from system logs like I'd been some passing temp instead of the spine of the whole damn infrastructure. So I sat, stared at the sky turning bruise purple over the neighborhood. Thought about that stupid line Eli had said in the conference room, "No one is irreplaceable." Maybe not, but some people are unforgettable. And some systems, they remember exactly who kept them alive and who let the clock run out. Recruiter found me on a Thursday, wedged between a dentist appointment and a grocery run where I stood too long in front of the freezer aisle wondering if buying ice cream meant I was spiraling. Her name was Kira, and she opened with the one sentence guaranteed to break my week-long silent streak. "I know what you built, and more importantly, I know what they lost." I didn't respond right away, just leaned on my cart next to a stack of frozen peas and listened as she ran through her pitch like a woman who had done her homework. She wasn't bluffing. She referenced the exact architecture I'd quietly refined over 5 years, the threading workarounds I'd slipped into our data pipeline to keep latency under 200 ms during peak traffic. She even mentioned the replication cluster by name. No linked in profile stalking. No saw your resume online. She knew the rival company was newer, leaner, Funded by people who didn't pretend to understand tech, they just hired the right people who did. They weren't interested in buzzwords or thought leadership. They wanted systems that didn't break, and apparently they wanted me. I told her I wasn't actively looking. She laughed. "You're not," she said, "but they're about to start noticing your absence, and we'd rather be the ones who see you first." The interview was the next morning. For video, no trick questions, no weird brain teasers about sorting jelly beans or designing traffic lights in space. Just, how did you solve X? How did you catch Y before it broke? What did they ignore that came back to bite them? I didn't hold back. I didn't need to brag. I just told the truth. The years of forgotten labor. The patches made at 3 a.m. The way I'd threaded stability through chaos like steel through drywall. I watched the interviewer's face go still when I mentioned the sandbox replication credentials, how I'd set their expiration dates as part of a broader security hardening strategy that had been deprioritized by strategic leadership. He didn't ask who leadership was. He didn't have to. They made the offer that night. Full stack authority, infrastructure autonomy, no willy, no politics. A signing bonus that made me double take, health coverage that didn't look like a PowerPoint lie, and stock options, real ones. I stared at the PDF for a long time, not because I was unsure, but because it felt unreal. After years of being the safety net no one thanked, someone finally handed me a trapeze with a net and told me I could fly. Still, even as I e-signed the offer, my other monitor showed the internal admin logs of my old company, courtesy of Marcus. Nothing private, nothing I wasn't already authorized to see once. Just enough to know the countdown hadn't been stopped. The replication token was still expired. No fallback credentials, no hotfix push, no updated logging workflows. I watched a fresh commit go through the main demo branch. A change to the UI theme, pink buttons instead of blue. Nice. Pretty. Meanwhile, the engine coughed underneath them like a dying furnace. I opened a clean Slack workspace, mine now. My new company already had me onboarding. Access was being provisioned. My username was active. The welcome message was warm, short, and sincere. But I couldn't look away. The fuse was still burning, and I knew the exact second it would reach the charge. Demo day landed like a loaded gun on the conference room table, everyone pretending it wasn't pointed at their feet. The office was dressed for success. Branded swag on every desk. Finger foods nobody would touch. Rented espresso bar in the lobby, where some poor barista was steaming milk for people too anxious to drink anything. They even rolled in a backdrop with the company logo repeated like wallpaper, because apparently, investors are swayed by photogenic narcissism. The CTO, Jared, looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. His usual relaxed slouch had stiffened into CEO hopeful posture, tie slightly crooked, shirt 2 sizes too large from weight he hadn't had time to notice losing. He paced by the podium while he did his rounds, greeting people like a wedding DJ before the first dance. Everyone smiled too wide, laughed too hard, and ignored the low hum of dread vibrating beneath it all. The live stream went up at exactly 10 o'clock a.m. 2 major funds were watching from the other side of the virtual curtain, one from New York, one from San Francisco. Both had teased term sheets. Both were expecting fireworks. What they were about to get was a Molotov cocktail with the fuse already kissed. Jared kicked it off with corporate speak and tight optimism, thanking the incredible team and emphasizing their scalable innovation pipeline. Then, the product lead took over and walked through a glossy intro of the new UI, which looked like a Squarespace template wearing too much makeup. Round of polite emojis lit up in the chat from investor reps. Then came the real test, live data sync from sandboxed replication. This was the crown jewel, the big moment, the see it actually works step that separated them from a slideshow. Jared queued up the module, and that's when it happened. No crash, no explosion, not yet, just silence. The screen flicked, lagged. The module spun once, twice, then stuck. Real-time customer stats didn't populate. The revenue visual hung with empty placeholders, dollar. Jared stalled with filler. Let's give it a sec. Sometimes these cloud environments, the product lead looked off-screen, clearly panicking. Backstage, engineers were watching logs scroll like an EKG in cardiac arrest. The fallback sync, designed to step in if the sandbox lagged, wasn't triggering. Nodes failed to authenticate. 3 timeout errors stacked. Then 5. A red wall of replication auth failed filled the screen. They had no access. No token, no way back. Jared tried a manual refresh, still nothing. On screen, the Jumbotron showed a loading spinner that looked like it was mocking them. The investors started muting their mics. You could see it in their camera feeds, eyes narrowing, jaws tightening, someone typing furiously in another window. And in the back row of the office, seated quietly in a plastic folding chair, lead engineer Rohan sat perfectly still. Watching, waiting, his phone buzzed once. He picked it up, read the screen, then looked up and locked eyes with Jared, and shook his head. No fix, no backup, no way forward. The entire room felt it, like pressure dropping before a storm. That sinking realization that you're not going to recover, that you can't patch over what you didn't understand. That someone somewhere had warned you, and you deleted them. 10:23 a.m. The spinner stopped spinning. For one gorgeous, suspended heartbeat, the screen froze mid-transition. The live dashboard hiccuped, choked, then spat out a single line of truth in bold red letters across the Jumbotron. Fatal. Replication auth expired. Credential token invalid. It was so big, so sudden, so blunt that for half-second, everyone thought it was part of the demo. Some clever failure state animation, something designed to impress by showing how well they handle errors. But then the logs began pouring in on the side panel. Real logs, unsanitized, raw. Critical replication server handshake failed. Error: no fallback credentials found. Fatal data integrity compromised. Read-only lock engaged. The chat from investors went from emoji applause to dead silence. Then, is this part of the presentation? Should we pause the feed? Who has root? And in that silence, that sacred 30-second vacuum where time folds and oxygen disappears from a room, Jared, the CTO, just froze. He didn't blink, didn't speak. His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to form words, but had forgotten how they worked. The color drained from his face in real time, a live broadcast of a man realizing he's standing in front of a firing squad, and someone just loaded the chamber. Somewhere near the back, could hear a plastic cup hit the ground and roll. He scanned the crowd like a drowning man. Searching, pleading. That's when he found Rohan. The lead engineer sat motionless, calm, a statue of quiet resignation. Jared's gaze locked on him, hope leaking from his eyes like air from a flat tire. And Rohan, without standing, without saying a single word, just raised his phone and turned the screen toward the stage. One name. Big, bold, typed in notes like a telegram sent from the dead, her name. Jared saw it, everyone saw it. The truth didn't scream, it hung in the room, dense, heavy, and painfully, exquisitely clear. This wasn't sabotage. This wasn't some hacker in a hoodie. This was a credential, one line of access that expired exactly when it was supposed to. Warned about, documented, forgotten. And the only person who ever understood why it mattered was the one they kicked out. Jared's fingers twitched. His hand went to his mic like maybe he could say something that would fix it. But there was nothing left to fix. The dashboard was dead. The demo flow broken. Every screen was locked in a fatal loop. It didn't crash. It quit, like the system itself was too ashamed to continue. Then slowly, almost reverently, he took off his headset, stepped back from the podium, and dropped the mic. No dramatic clatter. Just the soft thud of failure, landing on carpet. Across the country, I watched it all on a private feed. One tab over, my Slack pinged. Welcome aboard, you're now fully provisioned. Let's build something real. I sipped my coffee, smiled, and let the silence do the talking. The moment the mic hit the floor, the spell broke. Not with screaming or finger pointing, but with the kind of chaos that only comes when people realize they are already too late. Chairs scraped back. Investors whispered into phones. One rep in a navy blazer yanked out his AirPods mid-call, stood, and walked straight out of frame. Another typed something so fast his keyboard echoed across the livestream. Jared stood there like a man halfway through a funeral speech who just realized he was the one in the coffin. And Eli was nowhere. Someone said he was working remote today. Of course he was. Ghosted his own demo day, the crown jewel of his career-defining streamlining. Last seen updating his LinkedIn banner 2 nights before with the words culture. Velocity. Vision. Now. His Slack status was set to beach out of office, and his name was vanishing from org charts faster than his fingerprints from the disaster. Back in my apartment, I refreshed the onboarding checklist. The new company, clean UI, minimal nonsense, had already sent my keycards to print and provisioned my containers. Their internal repo pinged with my first set of permissions, full stack authority. Admin rights that came with respect instead of suspicion. Then Slack chimed. You're all set. Great to have you on board. Take today to settle in. You've earned it. I closed the tab, closed the terminal. Let the hum of my new machine fall into silence. My coffee was still warm. The sun finally cleared the high rise across the street and flooded my window with gold. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel wasted. I didn't gloat. Didn't post anything. Send a told you so email or leak the logs. I didn't have to. The bridge they thought they burned, it wasn't even mine. They built that mess from scratch, arrogance for concrete, shortcuts for nails, and then kicked me out before I could warn them about the rot. All I did was leave the door unlocked and let the wind do the rest. 2 days later, a push alert lit up my phone. VP of Strategic Ops departs amid failed demo fallout. Sources say internal audit uncovered systemic access failures tied to mismanagement. And the ticker underneath? Company valuation down 42%. I turned off my notifications, took a walk, bought fresh flowers for no reason, came back, opened a clean notebook, and started sketching what we would build. Not to prove anything, not for revenge, but because finally, someone saw me as essential. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.